there are a lot of opponents that we just naturally look at Tennessee's football schedule and we think Tennessee will beat or at least should beat. I can throw out a couple. Kentucky, Vanderbilt. I'm not even talking about the Floridas of the world. Florida is at least going to be a challenge. It's on the road. And I'm certainly not talking about the Georgias and Alabamas of the world because they'll be favorites. But as far as the underdogs on Tennessee's football schedule, let's take a look at them for a second because one school in particular is receiving a whole lot of pub in terms of a team that could be an in vogue upset pick. And I'm talking about an Appy State that goes to Michigan and wins. That type of team. And I think one would probably be Virginia, obviously, even though that's not a home game. It's a neutral site. Then you have Austin P. I don't think they're actually going to beat Tennessee. Then you got a game in September that we're going to get to. But when you continue to look at the teams that could beat Tennessee that will be underdogs, South Carolina, I think Tennessee is going to play one of those revenge games and have a revenge week at practice, which is what really matters. Texas A&M, Tennessee will probably be favored, but I think Texas A&M put some things together this year, so that's not a gimme. Kentucky, I think, has a bounce back game, a bounce back season. UConn, Tennessee's going to beat UConn. Missouri, not really concerned about that game, at least I don't think. But the one that's gotten an awful lot of pub recently is UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio. And Chris Lowe of ESPN, who was nice enough to join us at SEC Media Days, wrote about this. And then you also have On3, who said that's a potential upset in the making. Caleb, what do you make of that? Is that fair? This was a very good UTSA team last year, and they come to Neyland Stadium. I would argue this is the exact kind of non-conference opponent that you don't want to play. You either want to play one with a big name, like, say, a Notre Dame, or Tennessee's played other teams that were big names like Oregon or something like that, because you get the pub. So even if you lose, it doesn't ding you in the minds of most of the voters. And the College Football Playoff Committee can say what they want to, but they're not going to watch all of UTSA's games. And if Tennessee were to lose to UTSA, then that would be a major ding to their college football playoff possibilities. But Caleb, let me ask you, what do you think of UTSA's chances of beating Tennessee in Neyland Stadium? On the surface, you wouldn't think so, but this is a pretty good football team.
Yes, I wouldn't put them high, but it could be a hangover game because it's right after Florida. And this is the best group of 5 team in football this year, guys. Make no mistake. UTSA is the team that is probably going to go to the New Year's 6 because the top group of 5 team gets that dub. They have it's weird. They don't have, their head coach is Jeff Traylor, who coached at the high school level and was a position coach and special team coach, almost like a Shane Beamer type, if you look at his resume, before he took the job at UTSA in 2020. But he has had great offensive coaching. He's made the right offensive hires the whole time. And that's a really, really big deal. And I think that has a lot to do with what's happening right now at UTSA. They've got Matt Maddox, an offensive coordinator, and I believe Will Stein was there last year, but Will Stein is now at Oregon. But they've coached under a lot of different offensive systems. And they got a quarterback in Frank Harris who is dangerous. And look, we know this from Tennessee last year. They can struggle against really good quarterbacks. I mean, and this is a very, very dangerous one where if they're having a hangover, I mean, Dave, if they're having, we talk about with the South Carolina game, it was probably a bad week of practice. All day they're watching college football games, so they're just not that up for the game when they kick off Saturday night, and they get blown out. Florida could have the same issue for them. So I got to be honest. I'm sorry, Texas San Antonio could have the same issue for them because they play Florida the week before. Be riding high from the Florida win. UTSA comes to town. I mean, don't overlook this game.
I don't think Tennessee's going to overlook it. I also wonder this. At what point do you get to a roster status in which you're not overlooking teams, but even if you do, you're so good you survive it. Is Tennessee close to that? Just like Alabama and Georgia. Alabama and Georgia specifically, in the past couple of years, they've come out and played flat games, but they're that much better, so they end up winning it in the second half because they come at you with depth and they come at you with fresh players. And at the end of the day, they're just better. Maybe you made a trick play or something in the first half to keep it close, but at the end of the day, they're just better. So how close is Tennessee to that? Or are they?
I think they're almost there. I think the one thing that works in Tennessee's favor, and this is actually a big deal, one of the reasons they don't come out flat that much, I tried to pick a lot of games last year. I was like, they'll come out flat, they'll struggle, and then they would score in the first 2 drives. Heupel makes he makes it a point to score early. That's like the biggest focus of Heupel's game plan, is he wants to score as early and as quickly as possible. And I think when you do that, I think Tennessee can overcome playing flat a lot of times because of that specific factor, that Josh Heupel wants to score as quickly as he can. You're not going to see ball control ever when you're playing flat.
No, I think you're right. And I don't think you're going to allow other teams to get that close in which you should be concerned. And I think that Nick Saban, his big failing, in my opinion, failing or shortcoming early in his coaching staff was, Caleb, I thought he took his foot off the gas in the second half. You're never going to have that issue with Josh Heupel.
No, not at all. You're never going to have that issue. And, I mean, he wants to pour it on. And, when you do it from an offensive perspective, I think you're more likely to not be flat. If you're a defensive-oriented team, I think you're more in danger of coming out flat if you're a defensive-minded team. And, if you play hard-nosed, tough football, because that is a little more about playing excited and getting up. If you're an offensive team and the fun that comes with scoring, you're going to be willing to score early and often to try to put the game away, even if it's a team you're not really excited to play. This isn't mid-90s Tennessee, as you remember. I mean, how many times they either struggle with Kentucky or Vanderbilt every year. It seemed like one of those teams put up a fight against them.
But should you be more concerned if you're a Tennessee fan with UTSA or over Kentucky or South Carolina or some of the other teams that would be considered underdogs? Where would you rank them?
I'd rank them below Kentucky and Missouri. And I say because those are 2 road games for Tennessee in the SEC, and they come at unique times. Kentucky off a bye, Missouri. I got to go back and look at the schedule, but it's at a unique time in the schedule where those are a little more dangerous. And Texas San Antonio, coming to Knoxville is not going to be as big of a deal. I got to be honest with you, Dave. I got UTSA tougher than South Carolina or Texas A&M. Yes, tougher than South Carolina or Texas A&M.
Really? What about Kentucky? What about Kentucky?
No, not Kentucky or Missouri, because those are road games, and they're at unique points. I think Tennessee. You brought up the week of practice.
UTSA is tougher at home than Missouri on the road.
No, they're not. I don't think they are. I think Missouri on the road is more dangerous than you do this year. I'm a little higher on Missouri on the road than you are, just because I think that they played a lot of games close last year. They were a bad call away from beating Georgia last year, and. So, I mean, again, the week of South Carolina, Tennessee.
That wasn't Georgia. I mean, they played a lot of games flat last year.
Yes, but yes, they played a lot of games flat and still won in dominating fashion. If Missouri actually put up a fight against them, and I mean, Missouri should have been 10-3 last year. They were like 4 fluke plays away from 10-3. And would I take now again, if Missouri's coming to Knoxville, it's a little bit different or at a different point of the schedule. I got Missouri and Kentucky as tougher games, put it this way, than Texas A&M or South Carolina. I think Tennessee blows out Texas A&M and South Carolina. And I think they have an easier time with Texas A&M than South Carolina. And I think a big reason they're going to have an easier time with Texas A&M, I think they're going to take it personal with all the respect Texas A&M might be getting the week leading up to that game. And because there's a lot of hype behind Texas A&M this year that I don't think is justified because I think the wheels are going to come off.
So the scariest underdog is?
Kentucky. Kentucky is the scariest underdog for Tennessee this year.
UTSA ranks where?
3rd. Unless you consider Florida an underdog. I don't consider Florida an underdog.
Nah, on the road at Florida, given the history, I would consider Florida a big coin flip. So I think Tennessee is going to be favored in that game, but they're only going to be favored, 3 or 4 points?
Yeah, probably something like that. I mean, you're going to move the line because it's in Gainesville, and you're going to move the line because of Tennessee's history with Florida. And Vegas will have a better idea because typically Vegas doesn't overreact to a game the week before. I think they're really going to react to what Florida does against Utah. I think that's going to be one time where Vegas actually reacts.